So we are coming off decades of unparalleled economic prosperity around the globe. This was driven by globalization, by the technology transformation, and decades of very low real interest rate. COVID actually was a perfect storm, especially for technology adoption. And the result was truly unbelievable growth during the 21-22. However, post-COVID-19, we started to see clouds in the world. Clouds were mostly around geopolitical, and I'll talk more about it. We've also obviously seen the rise in inflation, but the one thing I would add to it today, which is we are seeing a beginning of a transition in the innovation cycle within technology, and I will try to talk about it much more. Those clouds in 2022, in the second half of 22, have actually developed into a full-fledged storm. We are seeing a very strong global, even local instability around the world. We're seeing polarization in society. We're seeing a disruption in labor market. We're seeing inflation, obviously high interest rate. The whole world is in a much stormy weather. Huge, obviously pressure on the public financial markets, which are very quickly moving to our world, which is private investment and tech investments, and it has a profound impact on the way we run our businesses and the way we run investments, and I will try to cover that. However, I do want to remind you, having been here for many, many years and seeing a lot of those ups and downs, actually in times like this, these are the times where the biggest transformative companies of the world, and I will show you some of those examples, are being created. I actually think that while we are seeing a slowdown in the innovation cycle, I see the beginning of a very exciting and maybe bigger innovation cycle that we've ever seen, which we are calling AI everything. And we actually think that the most exciting companies in the new area are born now. The Google, the Tesla, the Amazon of tomorrow are created today. I think within that, the Israeli ecosystem has proven its agility, and I will show you some historical perspective. But not only that, Israeli tech ecosystem is no longer a startup nation. We're focusing on scale-up nation. We're focusing on creating large companies. And maybe in this innovation cycle, we will finally have we will have our first Tesla or Amazon type of company coming out of Israel. But let me start with the beginning. So decades of economical prosperity. If you look at the growth of the world GDP, amazing growth. This is actually, if you look historically, this is the best economical growth in many, many decades. A lot of that came because of globalization. The opening of China, for those, some of you are too young to remember that, was a huge thing. The World Trade Agreements, the falling of the Iron Curtain has created this global village, which has created a very highly optimized global supply chain with massive cost benefit and with massive productivity gain. That global supply chain has enabled us to do an iPhone for $1,000. If iPhone would be produced in the US, it would probably be a $3,000 device. Massive cross-border trade, also of finished good. So it's not only about supply chain, it is about finished goods. And huge amount of middle class in China, in India, in other countries has created an unparalleled consumer demand globally. So that is a major factor. Then we also have, if you look at real interest rate, we're living in 2 decades of real interest rate of less than 1%, which obviously means cheap capital allows you to invest in growth and invest in, but for us, and I would like to talk more about, is the technology tsunami or the technology transformation that we've experienced. So it all started with the connected world, the dawn of the internet and the cellular. Some of you may not remember, we didn't used to have cell phones, but after that, 2007 is really when it all accelerated. In 2007, iPhone came out as a smartphone that changed totally the paradigm by the way we use internet. Facebook came out of university, created the social networks, and AWS was launched and created cloud computing as the ultimate ability to scale any technology deployment globally. The most amazing thing about it, it was dominated by platforms. People like Apple and Amazon and Google and Facebook and others, and the Chinese, Baidu, Tencent, and others, didn't try to become a full solution provider. They understood that the best way forward is to become platform and create the innovation economy and really democratized innovation. If until 2007, technology innovation was really only done by large companies like the SAP and the Microsoft and the IBMs of the world, with those new platforms, not only did it create a huge consumer market, they also enabled a massive amount of innovation across small and large companies. The innovation on steroids started with the tech development. It has become much easier and faster to develop new products. With open source, which is now probably open source is that readily, freely available source code of software, which is actually today more than 70% of every new software product that goes out there, big data, cloud, API economy. But they also provided very attractive new business model. Think about the app economy, the application economy, the fact that you can put an entire service on an app on an iPhone and reach directly a consumer. Internet advertising, software as a service, cloud consumptions. So the combination of very advanced technology which enables small teams to develop substantial technology and this innovative new business models which enable you to monetize a lot of this new technology has created this unbelievable $1.5 trillion were invested in venture capital across the world on those platforms, creating a massive innovation ecosystem. Some of you may have heard that one of the most compelling facts I always tell is when you look at the end of the first year after the iPhone was launched, there were 1 million apps on the App Store of Apple. 80% of them were developed by companies who had less than 20 people. That was a revolution. This was democratizing innovation and has created innovation on steroids across many, many industries. It has created this, what I call the global age of consumer. And the reason I'm saying consumer, because a lot of this innovation really focused on the digital life of us as consumer. The way we pay, the way we buy, the way we are consuming, the way we are communicating with each other, the way we are working together. All of that came around the consumer. So based on those platforms, which obviously became the tech giants, the monster, the dominant platforms, huge amount of products and massive amount of disruptive companies. And when you look at that, in this innovation cycle that started in 2007, we saw some of the most transformative companies, starting with Facebook or Meta, Netflix, Airbnb, Stripe, Square, massive $100 billion type companies that were created out of this innovation cycle. And then came COVID-19, and COVID-19 was actually one of the biggest accelerators in history of tech adoption. Even your grandmother knows how to buy online because they had no choice. But beyond that, we saw acceleration of 5G deployment in the US because everybody realized we have to be able to work remote. Commerce, everybody was working commerce, health, collaboration, productivity. The world has become a remote world. Some of the companies are still working in a remote environment. That accelerated, and probably these things would have taken years to implement, but within few months, we saw the entire technology industry going through an amazing acceleration. But we actually believe this innovation cycle is starting to plateau. When you think about it, everybody has an iPhone. So it's all about replacement market, and quite frankly, and don't quote me to Apple, there's really not that much of a reason to buy another iPhone and another iPhone. It starts to be quite the same. Also, there's an overwhelming, you want an electronic wallet. It was very unique when it came out. PayPal was very unique. Everybody has an electronic wallet now. You talk about e-commerce, go into an app store, go into a commerce site. There is so many products. Unit economics is now struggling because acquiring customers online, we used to be very easy and very cheap. Now it has become much more expensive, and we are starting to see. Again, this is notwithstanding anything about macroeconomics. It has nothing to do with the geopolitical tension. We actually think this is beginning to plateau, and I will talk about it later on. But when you look at this cycle, is it really eating the world? Was this innovation cycle really that significant that it changed everything? I claim no. It has dramatically changed the way our life is and digital consumer life, but there are so many industries that haven't really seen much innovation for many, many years. Think about the way we build buildings, agriculture. I always go back. When you think about aerospace, jet engine was invented in 1950s. It takes us the same time to fly from here to New York as in 1950, 70 years ago. That's not innovation. Even in automotive, we are finally seeing the first real change with the electrical vehicle, and I'll talk more about it because that's an example of what happens when one of this massive traditional industry is truly going through an innovation. And again, my claim is that this social mobile cloud didn't do much of an impact to probably the vast majority of the world economy. So what does that mean? I think we are starting to see a transition of innovation cycle. We have seen the internet coming out. We have seen the social mobile cloud. I think this is starting to plateau, but I do believe we are at the beginning and we are at the dawn of maybe the biggest innovation cycle ever, which is AI everything, and I will talk about that and what does that mean. So let me start by trying again to explain AI. I know AI, everybody thinks that ChatGPT is AI. Well, ChatGPT is a nice language model. It's not exactly what all AI is. So what AI is really about is four major elements, and again, it's a simplistic and probably a bit superficial explanation. It is about using massive amount of data. What AI enables us is to actually make decisions based on massive amounts of data, which normally in old way of doing computing, you could not really make those decisions. The second thing, which is very important, it's nonlinear programming. Anybody who has ever studied programming knows the if, then, else. We used to make decisions based on a limited set of data and a very clear table that tells you if this is the data, do this. When you think about decisions like autonomous driving or like economical prediction or weather prediction, there's so much massive amounts of data, and it's very hard to say if then else. What AI brought into the table is what I call nonlinear programming. So it's not about programming the computer to make those predetermined decisions. It is about making massive decisions and then using computer language model, which ChatGPT is a great example of, and machine vision enabled us to enter a lot of intelligence that humans usually have into the equation. All of that is creating timely, intelligent analysis of massive data. In real time, you can take massive amounts of data and come to conclusion that you could not predict. The result is better and faster decision making, actually better and faster than people. And that's a dramatic change, which is really at the core of the next innovation cycle. This AI innovation, the first real article about neural network, I think, was 1987. But actually, today, it's no longer a developer only. It's a massively available technology. I'll talk more about how. It takes much less time to develop it. You don't need a lot of code. You don't need massive amount of programmers to create AI. I think ChatGPT is the first product that made it very concrete to people what AI is all about. For those of us who have been in the industry for a while, it's exciting, but we've seen it before. I think what is amazing is that 100 million people within a few weeks started to use that, and people started to realize what a computer language model really can do. The result of that, first and foremost, something people don't like to talk about. This is the biggest threat to the giants of today. The biggest threat for Google, the biggest threat for Amazon, for Meta, and all that. AI is changing the rules of the game and enables an open platform to talk about new giants. Massive automation. We used to think about automation as blue-collar workers replaced by robots. Now, we will have white-collar labor replaced by people, lawyers, venture capitalists, bankers, allocators of capital, secretaries. Anybody out there can actually be replaced now by computers, and this has a massive productivity, but I'll talk more about it. And then remember those traditional industries? Now there is an opportunity to actually innovate not only the consumer life, but everything. Food, agriculture, construction, all of those industries can now be innovated using AI. AI is not just a piece of software that runs on current computer. It's a totally new innovation. It's new computers. It's new software, thank you, Amir, new software platforms, new products, new services, and it's going way, way beyond anything we've ever seen. So when you think about AI from an execution point of view, this is revolutionary. We need new computers, we need new software platform. Actually, the race for the new AI platform has already begun. If you think about Microsoft and OpenAI, Google, and in every aspect, NVIDIA on the chip side, on the semiconductor side, there is a real massive race now. Who will own the platforms? But remember, it's a platform for innovation, and there will be massive amount of new transformative companies that will be leveraging that. It has huge challenges, and we should take them very seriously. It has a profound impact on the labor market. McKinsey thinks that 55% of the position that we have today will be gone in 30 years. People will have to reinvent themselves. Like when manufacturing was gone from the US, it took labor market some years to adjust. This is going to be much bigger, much more massive, and huge social impact on the society. It has potentially very dangerous political impact. We already see the beginning of fake news, social bias, gender bias, privacy, copyrights. It's huge. When a computer can start talk like a person, when does and you can create this deep fake movies, where is the single version of the truth? Huge and challenging. We will need new regulatory technology. The regulation cannot be done anymore by people writing laws and clerks reading documents. Regulatory authorities around the world, they will need to find technologies to ensure the checks and balances. But let me come back to where we are. This is really the perfect storm, but exactly the opposite. 2022, the end of 22. We're seeing huge retreat of globalization. The China-US, which actually is developing and accelerating, has a huge impact on the world economy. The geopolitical tension, obviously the Russia-Ukraine war. The world is really turmoiling. If you look at that, there is a global unrest. For me, when we talk about and again, I don't care what your politics is, but when you look at what's going on in Israel, when you look at the polarization, and it's funny because I sit with UK people, they tell me, your polarization is nothing compared to ours. I talk to the Americans, they say, come on, Democrats and liberals can't even talk to each other. So there is a global tension right now, a social unrest. I think we obviously are continuing to see disruption of global supply chain. It's no longer has to do with COVID, but it has to do with, for example, China is blocked from US market. US vendors are starting to get blocked from China. This has a huge impact on the global productivity. All the labor market is still trying to readjust post-COVID. We are seeing phenomena like people are not willing to go back to work, not willing to go back to the offices, very strong in the US. People are trying to adjust with the new white-collar AI-based automation. This would be, again, a very massive. And of course, we live in a world where suddenly there is inflation and high interest rate. So let's talk a little bit about what does that mean. So, you heard Amir, the Fed funds right now is at 4.25. The first reaction, of course, for everything was the sharp drop in the public markets. We are seeing multiples now. This is revenue multiples for the cloud, emerging cloud index, which is probably the best index for really advanced technology. We are down to, let's say 2017 levels in terms of multiple. And I don't know what you think. I think it's still very volatile, and we still don't know where that goes. It also means that suddenly there is a risk-free alternative. You can actually put money in the bank and get 4 or 5%. So why do I need to invest in venture or in tech or in growth or etc.? So having a risk-free alternative is a fundamental change. And what does that mean? So what does it mean for us? I think the private markets are adjusting very quickly. And it's very clear, and you can see that most of you are coming from the institutional world, and you know it very well. Everybody has what they call the PE denominator. What percentage of my assets, if the private companies are not adjusting their valuation, suddenly I have too much private equity in my portfolio, or I have too much venture in my portfolio. And then there is the mirage of the dry powder. So everybody says, but there is a lot of money because a lot of the funds have a lot of money. Actually, a very interesting study that was done by Josh Lerner in Harvard showed that if you go back to historical crises like 87, 90, 2000, etc., a lot of that dry powder never came through. About 40% of what was thought to be dry powder post.com was never really called. It was either not called because of the investors not finding good enough project, or it was not called because LP got scared and basically told them slow down. So I think the feeling that there's a lot of dry powder is something you have to take very thank you. We have to take very cautiously. The other thing I would say is we have seen crazy rate. Again, I think in Viola we have been more responsible, and we will talk about it. But we've seen funds in the US come back every year or every 2 years for another fund and another fund and another fund. This is gone. This is over. You as LPs, GPs, we all realize we have to go back to a more normal pace. So, and you could see it globally. We will show you. It's minus 65% Q4 22 to 21. So people think that this was just the bump of 21, and now we will see. Actually, the last quarter was the lowest quarter in venture investments in 2015. So this is not a global trend, high during COVID and then comes back to the trend. It doesn't come back to the trend. There is a bigger slowdown than you think. But as Winston Churchill said, never waste a good crisis. And let's start about companies. And again, I won't go into all the, what we are doing in the company, but definitely focus. Companies need to be very sharp in what they do. They cannot do everything. They have to decide what's their real priority. They have to do it. So it's not only the what they do, it's also the how. They have to be more effective. You just read yesterday, Meta is laying off another 10,000 people. The whole tech industry is starting to realize there is much more you can do with much less people. It's very important to create business models that are more aligned with your customers. Right now, if you think even about SaaS model still creates innovation friction because you as a vendor and as a customer, why would I invest in developing more features if I don't get more money? So trying to find usage-based model, consumption model, value-based pricing, rev share, you have to change and create a business model where you are more aligned with your customers, you can diversify your revenues, etc. But let me focus on the investor side. The first and foremost, and you will hear it from all of us, and it's something that I must say I'm proud that in Viola we have started fairly early, raise the bar. Whatever worked in 21 cannot work today. You have to raise the bar. You have to plan for a tough funding environment that will take time. This is not a V crisis. This is not 2008. This will take time. That's how we see the world. We think that you have to really focus on the high quality. You have to be very disciplined in your valuation. But, and I will come back to the opportunities, you also have to double down on the emerging areas and use the time to increase your commitment to the company that can really make it. And let me, now with all the storm and all the negative, let me try and focus on the opportunity. The sun is hopefully coming out now. The biggest transformative companies were created when an innovation cycle happened. People are mistakenly thinking that it has to do with financial crisis. I actually think it has to do more with technology innovation cycle change. Look at what happened in 2000. We saw small companies like Google, Apple, Amazon emerge as mammoth transformative companies. But then 2007, Meta came out, Stripe, Dropbox, Slack, Airbnb, huge companies. I think this new innovation cycle will create amazing companies. The question is who those companies will be, and will Viola be an investor in them? I hope so. Actually, when you look post-crisis, or if you look post-innovation cycle transition, the returns for private equity and venture have been always better. When you are selling into a bull market, it's great. When you're investing in a bull market, it's not so great because you pay high valuation. So actually, historically, I actually think that post-crisis could be actually better. Let me focus now on Israel. Two things I want to talk about Israel. Israel has always been known about startup nation. I hate this word. Israel is no longer about startup nation. That's not what we are aimed. We set up Viola to support large global tech leaders, not startups that get sold early on to other companies. Israel is a scale-up nation, and I will talk about it. And Israeli entrepreneurs have proven again and again that they can move through innovation cycles and become leaders in this new innovation cycle. Israel is the 5th largest in absolute term tech ecosystem in the world. It's mind-boggling. It's really, when you think about how small Israel is, it is truly amazing. I think what has really changed, though, is that if from 2000 to until 2007, Israel only had startup companies. We really didn't have, so we did have companies that got sold for $1 billion, but they were pre-revenues or small revenues, etc., because of the bubble. But we did not generate any company with $1 billion revenues except Checkpoint. And then in 2007, suddenly, because of this new innovation cycle, and actually very consistent with what is happening in the US, we started to see massive amount of companies like ironSource and Fiverr and Weeks and many other companies who have become very substantial companies. Many of them went public. We had, I don't remember the amount, but we had many multi-billion-dollar IPOs and many companies with more than $1 billion in revenues, something you could have never thought about in Israel. I think the challenge for us now, I don't care anymore about unicorns. I don't care anymore about decacorn. I think Israel now should have the opportunity to start creating real transformative big companies, the next Teslas or the next Amazon. I think that's how ambitious we are here in Israel. If you look at how Israel adopted, and this is an historical, we started with semiconductor and software, and then we moved to the internet. We moved to internet and cloud, cyber, obviously, etc. I am a huge believer in the Israeli entrepreneurs. I think Israeli entrepreneurs are reacting. They are already very much in this new innovation cycle. They are focusing on that, and I think they have a very good chance of leading the next cycle, whether it's in IT disruption. One of the most interesting investment theses, and you will hear it probably during the day, only 4% of IT in enterprises is on the cloud. And when I talk about on the cloud, I'm not talking about putting your servers on Amazon. I'm talking about modernizing your software, become more agile, rewriting basically the entire $1 trillion+ enterprise IT, transforming in traditional industry. We talked about agriculture, construction, automotive, autonomous car, energy. There's so many industries that are huge. They're much bigger than anything we've done today. Israel is already working on the next one. Climate tech is huge and big, and you will hear more about it. And we continue to be strong in cyber, which is always important in things like fintech and digital health. So the summary is that global economy prosperity is now being shaken mostly by the geopolitical and the social tension. We actually think that the age of consumer innovation, this massive social mobile cloud, is starting to plateau. But we are seeing a new and probably more exciting innovation cycle, the era of AI and everything that really will change. Significant pressure on tech investment, but the next companies are born now, and very likely they are born here in Israel, and hopefully with Viola, we will be able to be the partners for them.